Taiwan is a fairly easy country to understand in GeoGuessr, and I feel like it comes up less and less, but it is still good to know how to region guess and how to recognize Taiwan rounds, because if you don't, you will just lose. So let's get into the tips and tricks about Taiwan and GeoGuessr. So this is the perfect round to start us off, because this has all of the basics. So Taiwan is located in East Asia between Japan and the Philippines, and unlike the countries around it that you could confuse it for, based off of the different script, like Japan, Taiwan drives on the right-hand side of the road, and which Japan drives on the left. Taiwan, you pretty much either always have like a double yellow center line, or just a yellow center line. Pretty much, it's usually the double center line, as well as on like the more rural roads, you have no center lines, which you really don't see in other places like the Philippines, which is close. Next up is, of course, the language. Taiwan speaks traditional Chinese, which is obviously not the same script as the Latin script. So the best way to distinguish like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, you don't need to know Korean because I have a video for that already. But in Chinese, overall, the shape of the words is more squarish, and each letter is made up of more small symbols. It's more complicated. Whereas Japanese is usually not in like a box. It's usually very few lines, but still pretty unique. But if you see you're driving on the right hand side of the road, then it doesn't matter anyways. And then Korean, you have circles in all the words. Now for probably the most infamous piece for identifying Taiwan on rural rounds, being the yellow and black striped pole. When you see this on the bottom of a pole, if it's a yellow and black, you're pretty much in Korea, Japan, or Taiwan. Korea's won't go all the way down to the bottom, and it will be shorter. Japan's, it will not be diagonal like this ever. And Taiwan's is exactly how you see right here. It's a yellow and black diagonal stripe pole going all the way down to the bottom. Very useful. Now some things for just identifying like East Asia in a way. When you see these like little concrete barriers on the side of roads, that's something I often associate with like Taiwan and Japan, as well as these little reflectors on top being like the Spanish color, but you see this also in like Taiwan and Japan and such. The plate doesn't really matter, you don't really need it. But I think this round's pretty much good. Oh, the chevron is the one you see in like the United States as well, which I think Japan uses that still, but yeah, that's it for this round. Now for the geography. Taiwan is either incredibly flat or incredibly mountainous, or a mix, of course. But you will pretty much see mountains everywhere in the country apart from like this full-on western part, or one of the island areas like Penghu, Kinmen, or Lianqiang is somewhere up here, yeah. Which those are official provinces of Taiwan. But yeah, that's about it for this round. So since we do see some mountains, we're not going to be in a city, obviously. So we're going to be somewhere in like the middle area. There's not really any coverage in like the big eastern mountains. So if you're in the mountains, you're either going to be like all the way east, or just like in this center part, which we were. Okay, and then here's a perfect example of just a completely flat round. Very agricultural, that's the word, and incredibly flat, with no hills in sight. This probably means we're going to be in this western portion. We could be in like Kaohsiung, Tainan, but when you see no hills at all, you're probably in like upper Tainan, Chiayi, Yunlin, Changhua, one of these provinces. Pretty much guaranteed. Okay, this is an interesting round. So Taiwan, you most of the time see Gen 4 camera quality, and with no Google car usually. But Taiwan does have some Gen 3 black car with the long antenna, which you don't really see that much on the mainland, but where you do see it is on the other islands like Penghu, Kinmen, and Lianqiang. Specifically, Penghu, if you look here, it's pretty flat. Look at Kinmen looks like China, like China. There is like some like hills here, but Kinmen's very traditional and pretty flat. While Lianxiang is much more mountainous, much more hilly and mountainous with all these. So if we have these concrete pallet roads, which you see a lot in Lianxiang, we're probably going to be there, especially with all the hills. Okay, and then here we have a more unique area to where first thing I will go over before the actual purpose of this location. When you see more like tropical trees, you're probably farther south. That's just a common thing. You're really not gonna see that up near like Taiwan or Taipei. But next up, we are in a flat area that also has like hills and mountains surrounding it. So like we don't see any hills and mountains to the north. We can see some to the south and whatnot. But we're in a flat part of Taiwan. We can tell by the pole. A flat part of Taiwan that is surrounded by hills and mountains. Now, this area wouldn't really be that flat. But this little place between like Taitung and Hualien counties where you see there's just this big valley of just flat ground that's surrounded by mountains. That's where this is going to be. And you could just tell the difference between this area and the what was it, the Nantou round, like the first one, is that the vibe is more like Southeast Asian in a way. So yeah, it'd be farther south. Okay, here we have a similar thing. So we're in a very flat part of Taiwan, very agricultural. That's the big difference between the west and the east. But we do have pretty severe mountains to the north, to the west, and to the there's a north, south, and west. Yeah, very agricultural. We don't see really. We see this one, which you see all across the country, but we don't really see any tropical trees. Really, the east is completely flat, which is very useful to know. So we know we're probably not going to be in the south, since we have big mountains to our like west. We're probably not gonna be in this western area. So we know we're not in this valley. We know we're not in this western part. Where does that leave? It leaves the far north, and in particular, if you have absolutely nothing to the east, probably in this Yilan portion. I think the Taipei area could also somewhat work, but it'd be more developed. It'd be a very weird spot with no mountains to the east. But yeah, this is the Yilan County. Okay, and then here we are in a city. We're in the direct center of a city. It says Taipei there, which that helps. But the main thing with Taipei that I added, it's the only city I added a tip for, is that oftentimes in Taipei you have some pretty old buildings. You have some pretty old and rundown buildings like this. Doesn't look as like high tech as you see in like Yilan or Kaohsiung, but still an incredibly big city. Yeah, you'll see a lot of historic buildings, a lot of like rundown buildings, like I said. Also, the red brick buildings you see more in the north. I think like Taiwan, Hsinchu, and Taipei particularly you see those. Okay, and then here we are in a Taiwan round where we are pretty much directly in the middle of the mountains. But you'll see a lot of like big highways just in the dead center. We see some more tropical trees, so we're probably not like super north, but we could be. So this would probably just be somewhere in like the kind of to the south of the country, but just click in this like center area, but not too far east because there's really no coverage here. Just click where you see highways and rounds like this. And that one was actually more north, but same thing, just big mountains everywhere. Okay, and here's a pretty unique area of Taiwan. So for one, we do actually have, I believe, Gen 4, but it looks completely different. This place looks like the Guam for a US. It looks completely different to normal Taiwan. So we don't actually have the Gen 3 car, but it's not mountainous whatsoever. It's maybe a tad bit hilly, but it's not agricultural. It's very forested. It doesn't feel like mainland Taiwan. So it's going to be one of these islands around. specifically this one I believe is Penghu or Kinmen. Kinmen, it does look more traditional, closer to China. But I don't think it's gonna be them. I think it should be Penghu. I think Kinmen you always see the black car, but particular with Penghu is you see some pretty unique trees. For one, you see these pines. Pines in Taiwan, at least like this, you really only see in Penghu. I think these are called Norfolk pines, but you don't really see those in Taiwan. And also a lot of unvegetated trees. You see so many trees without any leaves here in Penghu. And then here, once again, this is like the Christmas Island for Australia. Completely different and much more tropical than the normal Taiwan. We do have the Gen 3 black car with long antenna, which it's not as much like super mountainous or super agricultural. This honestly looks more like in Indonesia, like in Malaysia, compared to a. I mean, it still looks like Taiwan more obviously, but it's just more of that like lush style. Unpaved road, not very developed. This is Kinmen. If we look in the distance, we could probably find some more, like more traditional Chinese architecture, which you see all across Kinmen. But yeah, Kinmen also does have pretty red roads. Now, I'm really not going over Lianqiang, Kinmen, and Penghu very much, is because I think out of all of my modern duels videos, I think I've ever maybe gotten one in those 3 total. You're not gonna see them. Especially since Taiwan locations, I feel like you are just getting more rare and rare as time goes on. They're probably like just rare now, not anything higher. But you're not going to see a Penghu, Kinmen, or Lianqiang. But learning them when your opponent doesn't know them can get you a lot of points. Anyways, that is a pretty short and sweet tips and tricks video over the country of Taiwan. Pretty much done with these tip and trick videos in the East Asia region, because the only countries left are countries I'm not very good at. But when I do, I will get them to you. But anyways, that is it for the Taiwan tips and tricks GeoGuessr video.